Hello viewers, I am back again with another chapter, and as you know, Chief Seattle's speech has been adjudged as being the most difficult text in the Icse treasure trove by not just the students but by some teachers also. I am here to break that notion. It's because when the whole world calls something difficult, the human psychology, the human tendency is to slowly comprehend, interpret that particular thing as being difficult. Why? Because the XYZs, the ABCs, every single person everywhere has been calling it difficult. How can I say it is not difficult? After having gone through this explanation minutely, I am sure I will be able to break that notion of yours. You will not find Chief Seattle's speech difficult anymore. Why? Because literature is a bundle of emotions, and this text, dear viewers, this text has emotions which have been kind of gathered and exploded. Why exploded? Because it showcases the emotions of a tribe, of a man, of a race that is declining. If we are human beings, we will understand the pangs and the pains of a fellow human race. Let's begin. The introduction says, Chief Seattle was a Native American chief, a member of the Suquamish tribe and a prominent figure among his people, who pursued a path of accommodation and reconciliation with white settlers. Now, you have understood by having seen the world map in the beginning of the video who the white settlers were. These were the European settlers who were there, gone into America and slowly eating into the land which belonged traditionally to the Red Indians. And now this story begins where the whites have already captured, taken over a large section of the land, and the few that remains belongs to people like the Chief Seattle's men, where the Suquamish tribe is inhabiting, and we have the Chief Seattle trying to defend and protect his people from the whites. Which is why it talks about reconciliation, it talks about accommodation, adjusting, somehow accepting. The following is a widely publicized speech attributed to Chief Seattle in which he argues with gentle irony in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of native Indians' belief, traditions and land rights. Although what he actually said may have been lost through translation and rewriting the speech or letter attributed to Chief Seattle has been widely cited as very important, you may underline it, as powerful, bittersweet plea for respect of Native Americans' rights and environmental values. The city of Seattle in the state of Washington in the USA is named after him. So this man, Chief Seattle, was so famous. He was a man of such honor and wisdom that the city of Seattle in USA has been named after him. So you can very well understand the gravity and the weight of this man. Let's start with the text. Yonder sky that had wept tears of compassion upon my people for centuries untold, and which to us appears changeless and eternal, may change. This is not a story. This is not a poem. This is a speech. A man who is speaking the final bit of encouraging, motivating words to his race before he sees the race eventually perish, decline. We have to understand it in that context. This is a speech. A man is speaking these words, and you have the people gathered there listening. So he says in the opening line, yonder sky, the sky over there in a distant, the sky that you see, that sky has wept tears of compassion. Compassion means very sensitive emotion. You are actually expressing sympathy. You're finding things piteous. You're expressing that pity. And who is doing that? It's the sky that has been doing that. Not for today, not for yesterday, not for the last month, but for centuries. Upon whom? Upon the people. That is the Red Indians, who were the inhabitants of America, the Native Americans. Then he says, it appears changeless. Why? Because they have been doing that, showering those compassionate tears over their people for centuries. So you may assume that it will not change. It appears changeless, but it can change. He gives a strong warning in the very first line. Things that we have taken for granted will not be happening tomorrow. That's what he's trying to say to his people. Today is fair. Tomorrow it may be overcast with clouds. Now this speech is full of contrasts. As we go forward, we will see how Chief Seattle has used contrast to highlight emotions, to highlight what he wants to say in terms of his outlook, in terms of his perspective. He has compared things which are exact opposite to one another to highlight his plight, highlight his pity. So he says, today is fair. It's absolutely fine. There is no problem at all whatsoever. But tomorrow it can change. Why? Because it may be overcast with clouds, uncertainty. It may be very, very, humdrum and very mellow and gloomy. So it may not be as fair tomorrow. And tomorrow here is the future. My words are like the stars that never change, he says. My words are like the stars that never change. It's unchanging. It's like the nature. It's like the stars that have been there for centuries. You can trust them to be back once they complete their evolution. Same goes for my words. My words will not change. Whatever Seattle says, the great chief at Washington can rely upon with as much certainty as he can upon the return of suns or the seasons. Now, the great white chief is the president of America, right? So he says, the president of America, the great white chief, can rely upon my words like everyone else can rely upon the rise of the sun from the east every single morning, like the coming of winter and then summer and then the seasons one after the other every year. It does not change. Similarly, the great chief, the president of America, can rely upon my words. It will not change. The white chief says, the big chief at Washington sends us greetings of friendship and goodwill. Now, the big chief is the US president and the white chief is the governor, right? And it says that the big chief at Washington sends us greetings of friendship and goodwill. Now, this is a little kind of dramatic. It's something that is a little sarcastic, the ironical, you can call it, because the Red Indians are in such a state that they are powerless, that they are helpless. And you have these strong, powerful white men. They are sending them greetings of friendship and goodwill. Let's see how it goes. This is kind of him, he says, for we know he has little need of our friendship in return. Acceptance, humility. He knows. I am like a rat in front of an elephant. What will I do if there is a war? Nothing. I have to die. I have to perish. So he says, this is kind of him. Kind. It's like a kind of sympathy that he is showering on us. It's kind of him, for we know he has little need of our friendship in return. He has no need of our friendship. His people are many. They are like the grass that covers vast prairies. Prairies, all of you must be knowing in geography, these are the vast grasslands of North America. Unending grass, numerous, innumerable, you cannot count them. Their men, their people are like the vast prairies. I told you about contrast. Here you go, the first contrast. Their men are like the prairies, vast, uncountable, and us, what about our people? They are like the grass that covers the vast prairies. My people are few, he says. I don't have any. Countable, handful, right? They resemble the scattering trees of a storm-swept plain. When a storm sweeps over a plain, what remains is only a handful of trees which are strong enough to withhold themselves from flying away. So my people are like those trees that remain after a storm sweeps the plain. The great, and I presume good. The word presume is important. Obviously he is great, the great chief. But I presume, I hope, I expect, I assume that he is good too. Good. White chief sends us word that he wishes to buy our land but is willing to allow us enough to live comfortably. Now this is something strange for the chief Seattle, because he has never kind of equated his land as a property with money, because he has never had that intent of selling land, because he has, and his race and the whole Red Indians, the tribes that were there in America, they inhabited the land. It was theirs. They could never think of selling the land for something. Here, they have got that kind of, that invitation to sell off their land, right? But is willing to allow us enough to live comfortably. Once they were huge in number. They needed the whole continent to live comfortably. Now they have shrunk. They are a little piece today, a little number today. They don't need the huge continent anymore. So even if they are given a small piece of land, they say they will be able to live comfortably. Let us see what happens next. This indeed appears just, even generous. So submission. There is a touch of irony, touch of sarcasm involved. This appears just. It's just and it is generous that the white people are giving us this. Imagine someone enters into your own house and says, fine, from today you will only have this room to yourself, and other rooms, every floor of the house will be belonging to us. Will you accept? You will not. But what if those people who have come in are very powerful, are huge numbers? Then you will have to reconcile, you will have to accept, you will have to accommodate. Same is what is actually happening with Chief Seattle. He's trying to encourage, enlighten, and motivate his men. He says, for the red man no longer has the rights that he need respect, and the offer may be wise also, as we are no longer in need of an extensive country. Because we don't need an expensive country today, so this offer could be very wise for us to take. Then he goes on to say, there was a time when our people covered the land as the waves of a wind-ruffled sea cover its shell-paved floor. Shell-paved floor, the seabed covered with shells. You may ask, what are shells? Shells from animals, aquatic animals like crabs and all these sort of animals which are there in such huge numbers that it has covered the seabed. Our people were like that. He says, like the shell-paved floor, but that time long since passed away with the greatness of tribes that are now but a mournful memory. It's a mournful memory, something that we only mourn and we only think, and it brings us sadness. Why? Because all that greatness has gone, has evaporated, has vanished, eroded. So when we think about that memory, it brings us melancholy, it brings us sadness. That is why a mournful memory, wonderful alliterative phrase. I will not dwell on nor mourn over our untimely decay. Now, this is where practicality sets in his words. He does not want to talk about the past. He does not want to talk about what is gone. What is gone is gone. It cannot be brought back. So he says, I will not dwell on, nor mourn over our untimely decay. Untimely, not at the right time. They were not meant to decay so fast. Their race was not so weak that they would decay at this point in time. That is what untimely decay means. Nor reproach my pale-faced brothers. Now, reproach means to kind of, blame them, to disappoint them, that it is their fault. No, he does not want to blame anyone. Reproach my pale-faced brothers are the white men, the white brothers, with hastening it. They are the reason for their decay being quickened, hastened. So he says, I will not blame them, as we too may have been somewhat to blame. Why will I not blame them? Because somewhere for our decay, we ourselves are responsible, he says. Very significant. You may not find a leader who accepts mistakes. You may not find a man who wants to talk to his people about their own negativities and their own frailties. But Chief Seattle does it. He says, the decay, untimely death that we are suffering, it is not only their fault. Who are they? The white men. Some fault can be put on us also. Some blame on us also. Let us see what he says. Then he brings about youth. Youth means all the young people in the tribe of today and of the past, the bygone era and the years before that. All those young people, he puts that in one short word, and that is youth. He says, youth is impulsive. Impulsive means when you are not acting out of deep thought and planning. It's just an action based on an impulse. That is impulsive. And he blames the youth, saying, when our young men grow angry at some real or imaginary wrong and disfigure their faces with black paint. Disfigure their faces with black paint means when you take black paint and you put across your face. Why? Because you don't want your face to be recognized in the dark. That is what commandos do. That is what soldiers do, to camouflage themselves in the surrounding. And he says, the youth, whoever is guilty of doing this, that is, besmear their faces with black paint, they do it because their hearts are black. Such strong statements to make to their own people, blaming them that yes, whoever has done it in the past, now all these young men, the youth, their hearts are black, he says. Then, and that they are often cruel and relentless. Relentless means they don't have any sympathy, they don't have any pity. They want revenge and they want it at any cost, even at the cost of their lives. They go back at it again and again and again and again till they get it extracted. That is why relentless, unrelenting. And our old men and old women are unable to restrain them. It's like, commanders, young men saying, how's the Josh? And everyone answers, hi sir. How's the Josh? Hi sir. How's the Josh? Hi sir. And they all go to battle. Very nice, romantic. They all go to battle, but none of them return. Why? Because all of them died. All die. And who are the sufferers? Back home, the old men, the old women, who were not able to restrain them, who were not able to keep them home. They were so full of, revenge and so full of, the feelings of taking revenge and kind of showing the white men what they are capable of, that in that context, they go and they suffer by losing their lives. And the old men back there, the old women, the mothers and the children, they are there with a sonless family, with a fatherless family. That has been the past of the tribes in Native Americans, for the Native Americans, as far as Chief Seattle is concerned. He says, thus it has ever been. It has been like this forever. It is not that I'm saying you this now and they are only guilty of doing this now. They've been doing this forever. It has been like this. Thus it was when the white man began to push our forefathers ever westward. The map of America again needs to be told, shown. White men entered America and they kept pushing the Red Indians westward. Why? Because they themselves were inhabiting the land. And with growing population, they were piercing into the mainland. And the poor Red Indians, they had nothing else but to flee them, run back, escape. So he says, but let us hope. Here, there is a huge word, hope. Let us today hope that the hostilities between us may never return. Hostilities, the friction, the fight, the animosity, may that never come in between us again. This is where we can adjudge Chief Seattle as being very, very wise. He accepts that we will not be able to fight them. If we want to go and fight them, we will only lose our young men. That is what has been happening all these years through the course of the century. If they have given us this formal invitation of friendship, of goodwill, let us accept it. Revenge by young men is considered gain, even at the cost of their own lives. He has said, we would have everything to lose and nothing to gain. There is nothing left to gain. We will lose everything, whatever little we have. So if they have given us a small bit of land to kind of make our living, let us remain happy with this. Because if we go and fight, we will lose this also. We will lose our lives, he says. And revenge by young men is considered gain, even at the cost of their own lives. This is what, the exuberance of youth is all about. They want to prove a point. They want to fight. And they are impulsive. They throw logic out of the heads. They are only full of passion and revenge. And even if they lose their life, they feel it is a gain. Why? They have gone and killed, say, another 2, another 5, another 10. So that, according to them, is a revenge, is a win. But, he says, the young men, whatever they think, this is what they think. But to contrast their thought with the thoughts of the old men and the women, he says, but old men who stay at home in times of war and mothers who have sons to lose know better. They know much better than these young, impulsive soldiers, impulsive young Red Indians who go to battle and besmear their faces at the sound of battle.